go ahead and share my screen. All right, recording's going. Krypton check-in. I just noticed something. I think the nodes are configured to crash at block 5130 still, but the testnet is going to go until block 10,000 something. Is that something we should be worried about? Or is that just me? Like, is that just my configuration file?
Yeah, I think most people, when they're running locally, they actually, unless they are manually setting it, they exit at block height in the config file. It would be, at least like, for example, for me, it just shows up as null. So my nodes will keep running until whatever.
Okay, so that way we don't have to worry too much about it then.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay. Cool, checked in. Let's go through the board.
By the way, I know, Pascal, maybe you were looking at it, like especially Jude with your changes, like how are we feeling about short forks versus, having sort of a canonical chain that most people are able to build off of? Are we still seeing issues with that?
Yeah, it worked pretty well in the first day or two of the mining contest, and then at least my miner was mining on the wrong fork for quite a while. I haven't looked at the final results, but there's still some issues, and I don't know whether that's because some miners were actually, especially the natted one, were causing the problem. So it worked better, but there's still some issues, I think.
Okay.
And my miner stopped because I had a actual value to match what used to be in the Krypton thing, so it stopped not at 10,000, but at 5,000 something, unless there's a crash. I don't know, I'm just looking at it. It was working yesterday.
Yeah, I use crash pretty loosely here. I just mean like it stops.
Yeah.
So the changes I pushed out, they're not, we won't see the effect of them until everybody applies them. Like the chain will still look like it's having small forks, but but Pascal's right. That's exactly the test to do. You should run a local miner behind a NAT and see to it that that you're still able to produce a chain that other people can see. Because the big problem we'd seen before is that you would mine a block, but your miner wouldn't propagate it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
What would then happen is you would keep working on your fork if it was tied with the current longest fork, but only you'd be able to process that fork because your fork is not because to everybody else your fork's missing an ancestor still. There are a couple other changes though that will lead to a noticeable improvement in the overall network quality, like the fact that the system will now buffer messages for one sortition means that in Dewalker, in your case, your node had sent a block to all the nodes except for the master node. But I think that because the master node was excluded, it was possible that the other nodes were still behind by one block. So they would have ignored your block because they weren't behind by one Bitcoin block. So they wouldn't have recognized your block because it wouldn't have recognized the consensus hash that you sent out in your block's message. So they would have just dropped it. And that would have led other people to have never seen your block because all the public nodes you talked to dropped your block, which means that only you now have a copy of your block. The buffering would have changed that behavior because what will happen now is the other public nodes, even though they might have been behind one Bitcoin block relative to your miner, they would have held on to that message and tried to process it again once they had advanced their burn chain state. So that would have helped reduce the probability of your node producing a fork that only it knew about. Does that make sense?
By the way, I maybe wanted to share a couple of quick updates before we jump into going through the board. The first one is at least within PBC, we're doing a dedicated documentation week this week. And the goal is not that people are spending 100% of the time working on documentation, but at least making a concerted effort to pay a little bit more attention to docs, and at least on a few of the other teams, make a bit more progress. So I'm going to drop in a link here for this is mostly for PBC folks and maybe for Jude. For this team, I think the work that most people here are doing is critical enough and higher priority enough that I wouldn't necessarily say, drop what you're planning to do and instead focus on documentation. But what I would say is if you have any downtime, you're waiting in between test runs or anything like that, feel free to poke around at the doc. I think there are a number of issues that Alex and the DevX team have identified where just input from the blockchain team would be useful. So if something catches your eye where you think you can provide some feedback or input to other people who are working on documentation anyways, that might be a good thing to just sort of be aware of and keep in mind. But just wanted to flag that. The other items, I'm sure these will come up as we go through the board. I think from my perspective on the testnet, we still have issues with transactions pending in mempool for a while on and off, which I don't know if we have like a tight handle on exactly what's going on there yet. So that's one. The other is there is the crash, the SQLite crash that we've seen on a number of different instances across many different platforms. So I would like to just hear a little bit about that as well, if folks have any ideas on how to tackle that. So we can probably jump into the board unless people have any questions or comments about the documentation week.
I can speak a little bit to that first problem, the transaction staying in the mempool for a while. I can make a tool to help diagnose this better, but what can happen under the circumstances with block propagation is your transaction can be mined in a block, and a conflicting transaction, i.e. a transaction with the same nonce, can be mined in a sibling block. And if that sibling block gets enough confirmations in the blockchain that it's become part of the canonical chain state, then the orphaned block with the conflicting transaction will still be in the mempool forever and will be unmineable. I've seen that once before.
I think we don't even need that to happen for transactions to get stuck in the mempool because of the way the mempool is like structured. Because like when a transaction is received, it gets tagged with like the current chain tip.
Yeah.
And then if the miner like forks and is working on a sibling or non-descendant fork, it will actually never try to process that transaction.
We had seen this case though, where a transaction was on the canonical history but was not mined, possibly because there was a conflicting transaction that was earlier built on. Like the order of operations was like, I send a transaction and it gets mined. I send another transaction, it gets mined in a sibling block. Then a block gets mined on the original block that was not the sibling or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we support like replace by fee. So like if somebody uses like a higher fee or something like that, yeah, I think there's just like, at this point, still like an unknown number of reasons that a transaction could end up in this permanently pending state.
It could also be the test itself for permanently pending is not valid for some cases. Like what I really want to know is like, is your private key rendered unusable because the transaction never confirms and it's preventing you from mining sending a transaction with a higher nonce?
All right, well, let's start running through the board and then we can come back to this as a discussion topic if we have time.
Sure. Alrighty. Pascal, I don't know if you have merge permission, but you're good to go as far as I'm concerned with the replace by fee calculation.
No, I don't have merge into master. I've got merge into next. So if you can merge the VRF, the
RBF.
The RBF, yeah, that's a different F. One, that would be helpful.
Cool, done.
All right.
Sorry, I thought for a second
Thank
you
you.
had permission to do that, so I didn't touch it. So I just merged it.
No, I can do it next, but not master.
Gotcha.
Maybe someday.
Reviews in progress. Aaron, do you want to talk to us a little bit about this, the event dispatcher?
Oh yeah, sure. So this PR does two things. So one, it adds it adds a new endpoint for the event, for an event recipient, which is like new burn block, which gets called every time a sortition is processed.
Cool.
And it conveys the total received amounts from block commits.
Does it convey the parent block hash as well? Because we will see burn chain forks in production.
It just provides the burn block hash.
Okay. Might need to provide the parent burn block hash too.
Okay, we can add the parent burn block hash probably pretty easily there.
Yeah, I'm not worried at all. But this is cool because this will make it so that the sidecar can now process materialized view of POX state.
Yeah, so what it'll let it do is just like convey like POX rewards was sort of the ask on that one. And then the second update in this PR is for matured miner rewards. So miners had inaccurate account balances in the Explorer because it was trying to sum over events. And there were no events when miner rewards were matured.
I see.
So originally the ask was like to just add this as like an asset event to Coinbase transactions, but that's not actually when the assets are created. And so this adds a new field to the new block endpoint that conveys matured rewards.
Sounds good. I'll go ahead and take a look at that. If not today, then tomorrow, the latest.
Cool.
Speaking of PRs, I know that we talked a bit about this, I think Friday, at the architecture meeting.
Yeah.
Do we have any updates? I know I left some comments already.
Not really. I think like thinking more about it. Yeah. Yeah, I need to think more about this. I think ultimately the thing that we're going to need to do is like somewhat unfairly constrain how many of these operations get processed in the event of a Stacks fork.
So the background we're talking about, folks, can be seen in the comment history here. One difficulty with processing on Bitcoin stacking operations, which is necessary as a fallback in case Stacks miners decide to censor them. One potential problem with doing so is that depending on the number of burn blocks between two consecutive Stacks blocks that have passed, there can be an unbound number of stacking operations to processing between those two. And that has some non-trivial implications for chain liveness. Like if there's 10,000 such operations, it could cause the node to wait to spend a non-trivial amount of time processing them. So what we need to figure out is a way to make it so that we can have an upper bound on how many stacking operations will be processed, even if there's a whole lot of burn chain blocks in between two Stacks blocks. When you say unfair, Aaron, what do you mean by unfair?
So basically, like, let's say I submit whatever, in one block, there's 100 stacking operations that like are perfectly valid. Like the next block, if it looks at those operations, it will apply all 100 of them. Mm-hmm. The next block is a fork. And so it's now including 2 Bitcoin blocks worth of operations. And there's some limit there. And so it's only going to process a subset of that 100. As a user, this is like surprising, distressing, and unfair, basically no matter what happens. Like even if you're just doing like random choice or something, or like picking by Bitcoin fee or picking by whatever the total amount stacked. Basically any constraint that we add there is like, yeah, surprising to a user.
I agree. I don't think we can solve this just yet, but I mean, it does look like that no matter what you do, that there will be unfairness here.
Yeah.
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 Do we want to involve some product design folks?
I don't. I don't think so. I don't know. I think that it might be better just to sort of submit maybe a proposal. Like one thing we could do is like, you can update this PR so that it actually just doesn't process operations except for from its parent Bitcoin bot.
That could work.
And then if we want to like expand sort of the functionality beyond that, then we submit a proposal and can update later on. But we like start with like sort of the like simplest and least surprising working thing. Yeah.
I'm down with that if you want to make that change.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, cool. Ludo, this is still a draft, right? The Atlas Networking and DNS contract.
So I'm currently addressing the feedback you had with the state machine thing, but other than that, I think that the contract, yeah, we could start having some eyes on the contract.
Already.
It needs to have some kind of audit, like internal audit.
I'm going to go ahead and add Aaron then on this as well. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right.
And yeah, maybe you can wait on the yeah, for everything related to the attachment API. Maybe we can wait on the final version.
Sure thing. Charlie submitted this over, not over the weekend, just last week. I just saw it yesterday, the PR template. Do we need to talk about this, or is this something we can just continue working on offline?
I think we can handle it offline. Just for context here, I don't think we need to spend too many cycles on this PR template either. It was mostly an ask from Alex to just have some reminders whenever people open new PRs, like if there is a documentation impact, just to surface that more explicitly. So the primary goal of this PR template is to add that checkbox for, is there some documentation impact? Everything else, you can almost consider it out of scope. Like, I think Jude, your feedback, all of those things are quite useful, and we can incorporate them into this PR template, but just wanted to add that context. So the main goal is to just make sure that we are prompting people when they open a PR to think about documentation.
Gotcha. Yeah, we already kind of have this tradition where we update our SIPs concurrently with our.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I think it's probably more useful in other repos, and we're doing something similar for most other repositories as well.
Gotcha. Matt, how are we doing on this? Export name, namespaces, subdomains, and zone files.
Good. So PR is ready for review for you guys to check out. There's some of an Easter egg in there, started as a joke, but I think there's something in there to speed things up a bit. Started as a joke, but it seems kind of reasonable to me. You guys let me know.
Oh, is this the .NET version here?
Yeah. There's a fallback. There's there's the awk script version, and then there's a fallback to a .NET script version. It's not as ridiculous as it sounds. You can take a look. If you don't like it, I'll take it out, but it speeds it up by quite a bit.
What's the time difference between
25 minutes to 2 minutes.
Damn. All right. Well, maybe that can be won over then.
Okay.
I think it depends on your number of cores.
Yeah, that and like how your system deals with lots of SSD access.
I have a spinning Rust disk, so it's going to be a lot slower for me when I test it.
Yeah.
Cool. We can take a look at that. Pascal, how are we doing on 1641?
I have not added the test yet.
Okay.
That's still forthcoming.
Sounds good. Reed, how are we doing on the Rust code to inspect clarity code to evaluate minor set cost functions?
Good. It's coming along well. I'm mostly working on trying to make it a little bit faster right now, and still working through existing test cases and making sure that everything's working. I seem to have broken this one POX test that I'm a little bit confused about, but yeah, it seems to be working generally.
That's this particular PR here, right? The one that still has the failing case.
Yep.
All right, cool. Looking forward to that all working.
Yeah. Hopefully very soon.
Luda, we're still, this is still waiting for conflict fixes, right? Getting the chain to work on Bitcoin testnet.
Yes.
All right. And Pascal, I think you were taking a look at this with the latest mining code, right? 17.
Correct. Yeah, we still have problem. I don't know whether what I was doing would fix it or not, because I think you have something similar in the new code. So I still need to look at it.
Okay.
To
Let's take a
understand
look.
what the branches are in the latest run. That may be for different reasons.
I see. Okay. Just whenever you're ready, just let us know.
Yep.
Just looking at the in progress category here, per last week, I went ahead and tagged a few issues as being microblock relevant. I'm still working on the microblock specific issues because a lot of my time last week was spent getting the mining, the new changes to miner behavior up and running and adequately tested. But now that that's out of the way, I can spend more time working on these things. I'll add more issues as it becomes necessary to explain at a granular level what's going on in the microblock processing code. More of reads in progress issues. We just talked about that. And we just talked about, and Ludo has a PR open for this now. So I'm gonna go ahead and move this into a view in progress. We are doing subdomain processing in the node, right? Was that the consensus?
Wait, no, this part is moving to the sidecar, right? The discussion we had on Friday.
Right, I'm trying to remember what the consensus was here.
So we are moving everything, like the Stuxnet repo will only be hosting the DNS contract, which will be launched as a boot contract, and everything DNS related is moving to the sidecar.
Gotcha, that's right. I'm sorry, it slipped my mind. I'm just gonna write this down here then. Alrighty. Should this issue be moved to the sidecar repo then?
Yeah, I think that we still need to, maybe Matt, we can have a meeting or something to yeah, go over the different issues. But yeah, I think that everything DNS related will have to move to the sidecar repo if we are implementing that in the Stacks blockchain API versus another sidecar process. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Zone file storage, I'm just going to add the comment here. The other half of the conversation we had Friday was that zone file storage replication is definitely inside scope for the Stacks node. Cool. And the replication API, this is part of the attachment API, right?
Yeah, correct.
Got it. And on Bitcoin stacking operations, this is in progress. What was that? Did someone say something? Okay, I'm hearing things. Cool. New issues here. So I opened this issue just because I noticed when I was running my node with north of 4,000 Bitcoin blocks, my node would spend a lot of CPU time processing inventory messages, but almost all the inventory messages that it processed were unchanged from the previous time it requested them. And when you think about it, this makes sense. Like the longer, like the deeper into the blockchain a block is, the less likely it will be that not all nodes have a copy yet. So what I'm proposing here is that we set a per reward cycle inventory timeout, where the older a reward cycle is, the less often we try to refresh its block inventory. And I think that would save a lot of CPU time without leading to network inconsistency or inconsistent views of what other nodes have blocks. We can even make it more detailed, like the probability of a refresh could be proportional not only to how old it is or new it is, but also on the last time it changed. Because changes beget changes, but also the lack of changes beget the lack of changes. This isn't blocking anything, it's just a performance optimization. Testnet bug, miner node does not spend the Bitcoin and its Bitcoin burns are rejected. Is Phil on the call?
No, I don't think so.
Is this a bug? Because I know that block commits that use the wrong consensus hash or refer to a leader key that has the wrong consensus hash are going to be rejected anyway. Or if they have the wrong burn outputs, they'll be rejected.
I think that's more likely to be that what's happening to him.
It's unclear from the log just because I don't know what his address is, his miner address. And just running the miner, if it's an older version of the miner, then you're going to have this problem because the number of burn outputs was changed recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, might have to get back to him on that.
Is it okay if I update the issue to saying that we suspect that it's not a bug and to reopen if we can replicate it?
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and do that, that'd be great.
Yeah. Specifically, I think we suspect that it's like an old version.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's something I wanted to add to my dumping tool, because you can see whether there's words to tell from the database whether that's the case or not, or whether the consensus is wrong or correct.
Yeah, exactly. Because a malformed block commit won't even be stored at all. So I know we brought this up in the past about increasing the maximum mempool chaining value. Is there anything holding us back from just bumping this to 25? Can anyone think of?
I picked 25 as a reasonable number. Maybe we can do higher. I tried to look at like other blockchain what they did, but it's hard to find anything hard coded. And I think one of my suggestions was to make it a minor configuration.
Yeah, that could be doable.
So
I think you're right. It shouldn't affect consensus, and it probably would be fine if miners just made their choice. I know in Bitcoin it's either 25 or it's 35. I'm pretty sure it's 25 though.
yeah, but I couldn't find a confirmation. I know you said that in the past, but I did spend some time trying to look for if there was even a value in the configuration file. I couldn't find it. So
I don't think it's configurable. I think it's just the way that the default node is built.
Yeah, I think there's like a constant somewhere.
The risk you run if you make this configurable is that if people begin to expect really high values for this, it can create a lot of memory pressure on lower powered nodes. I think the reason, like a plausible reason for me that the Bitcoin developers would not have made this configurable, I'm not saying this is necessarily the reason, but it's a plausible reason, is that they wanted to make sure that everybody would be able to run a node on reasonable hardware without having to worry about the mempool exploding due to a high volume of TX chaining. Like they don't want to create any sort of social pressure, or they want to
Yeah, but
reduce.
in Bitcoin, you can specify the max memory used by the mempool, so it will sort of self-regulate like this probably.
That's true. We don't have that on our system yet, but we could probably add that too, orthogonally to this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Easiest fix, I think, is just to bump it to 25 as a constant.
That would help in many cases, because the two cases I think I had in the bug was like the faucet and for my swapper processes, I have 10 contracts that I need to deploy. So with 10 minutes blocked, that would take at least 2 blocks. Fine.
Yep. Let's go ahead and do that.
Not that I deploy these all the time, because in MockNet that's not an issue.
Yep.
It goes fast enough.
You want to send a PR that opens this, Pascal?
Sure. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, just open the constant. It'll be fine. Cool. Mining paid forward Coinbases in the absence of the sortition. I think we had a proposal for this as part of Munib's larger token economics proposal. This is just the issue that tracks the particular aspect of this, where if the network goes for one sortition, or generally speaking, for n sortitions without a stacks block, then the Coinbases that would have been produced get paid forward to the next miner to produce a block. Reason for this is that we want to make sure that if Bitcoin fees are high and stopping people from mining, then given enough time, it will become profitable to mine because they'll just get that many more stacks.
Super high these days. It would cost like almost $20 to mine to send one transaction.
Yeah, it's pretty high. So what we don't want to have happen is fees pricing people out of mining indefinitely. So what high fees would do, like high fee combined with a low exchange rate from stacks to Bitcoin while it would stop people from mining every block, we don't want it to stop them indefinitely. So making it so that you can just get more stacks if people all collectively wait to mine, would at least make sure the chain can make progress under such conditions. So this bug, I think, is fixed now. I guess we can just ask this guy to try again. The problem was we just weren't setting a read or a write timeout on the Bitcoin socket. Yeah, so I'm sorry. I should have fixed that a lot sooner.
At least we had an issue tracking it.
This is true, yes. But that should be addressed now. Like a read and I spun up miners twice after this with that fix applied, and in all cases I had no problem reaching the chain tip.
But were you having issues before that? I mean, I'm not doubting the fix. I'm just saying that it's probably hard to reliably reproduce the issue.
Yeah, it is. I was actually just about to say that. That doesn't prove that the bug is gone, though.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know why Bitcoin opens the socket and leaves it open and doesn't talk to you. That's kind of strange behavior on Bitcoin's part, but that's what we have to deal with, I guess.
We had lots of miners, so that could also be, especially if people doing a list and spend on the node that stuck, that one thread will get stuck if it takes too long to. So that maybe was something that was more likely to happen with that many miners.
I hope we're not DDoSing the Bitcoin node to death. If it's leaving sockets open and never closing them, then that's like a file descriptor leak waiting to happen.
You can check in on the stats at our end if something's funky.
I would expect that miners will eventually run their own Bitcoin node anyway.
That they will. Yeah, they absolutely will have to want it. They will absolutely want to do that for safety reasons.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think we're at the end of the new issues. This is from 10 days ago. Update the SIPs. We kind of already do that, so make sure to just keep doing that.
Jude, of the new issues, I think some of the stuff that we went through, can we just like move stuff that we absolutely need to do before minute one, just move them into the backlog column so we're not going through them again?
Sure, absolutely need to do.
Or that we discussed that we are going to do.
Oh yeah, sure. This can go in. This can go in. This can go in. Come on. There we go. Sorry, browser's being slow and stupid right now. I can go back and categorize the rest of these. This is kind of a long list. For backlog, just in the interest of time, let's just get through it right now. We just talked about these three things. Implement Stacks token unlocking in Genesis block. That's pretty self-explanatory. Just make sure everyone's tokens get allocated when the system launches. This is kind of interesting. It's a consensus breaking change. Do you think we can take it on this sprint, or should I push to next sprint? Doing the median of weights smoothed over 6 blocks for mining. I think we talked about this last time. It's already in milestone 45 to 47.
Yeah, I mean, it should be implementable during this sprint. Yeah, like if you don't have time this sprint to work on this, I probably would.
Okay, because I definitely don't, unfortunately. Oops. We'll see who gets to it first, I guess.
Cool.
Long pending transaction, that's a dupe. Mempool should accept out of order nonsense to some limit. Is this something we want to do by mainnet launch, do you think?
I wouldn't say that it's like an absolute necessity. So I don't know. I'd lower the priority on it.
Okay. But speaking of absolute necessities, where's that testnet bug that causes the panic, the crash?
Oh yeah. Let's see. I think I had moved it around. Maybe I think I might have moved it in the backlog already. Let's see.
Oh, this definitely has to be done.
Interesting. Oh yeah, it's a chain state node crash due to SQLite database log. It's still in the new issues. It's 1939.
1939?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can just.
Oh wait, there it is. Yeah, we got to fix that. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
This one's kind of tricky though, if I remember correctly. The underlying issue is that we can't set SQLite busy handlers in the context of save points.
So I'm not sure if this is actually like caused by the busy handler.
It's the absence of a busy handler. You're getting databases locked errors, and that's causing a panic because the SQLite put in the VM code.
Yes. Yeah. Unwraps. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that by doing a try, like just keep retrying until it succeeds.
Yes. We could do that. I think that like more broadly speaking, we're like basically misusing SQLite. Like the problem here is that you can't start a write transaction when there are like read transactions, even open across different connections. And all of our like RPCs, networking code, all of those things open read transactions against the Clarity DB like all the time.
When you say read transaction, they're not doing a TX begin, they're just doing a select statement, but you're saying SQLite will translate that into a transaction under the hood?
Yeah. Like what it's doing is like creating a read handle and holding it. Like, I think that we need to switch to like wall mode to see if this like improves this problem. Otherwise, like, I don't know, we're in a really bad place with regards to concurrency with how we're using SQLite.
Yep. Why aren't we using wall mode? Why haven't we been using wall mode this whole time?
Wall mode is just not like a default operation mode in SQLite.
But it does support it.
Yes. And there's very few downsides to wall mode. I think it's just traditionally it was never the default, and it does change behaviors. So they never changed the default.
We should.
I mean, I think it has some expectations on the underlying file system, right? So,
Yeah,
which,
that's what I was gonna say.
presumably is okay in most cases.
This does affect our crash consistency because I think wall mode does it does make the system more vulnerable to a file system crash, leading to corruption. Not that's a
Shouldn't
problem.
it be the other way around?
No, yeah, it's the other way around.
What's that?
I think if you have the file system that supports the semantics that wall mode needs, an application with wall mode enabled should have better crash consistency at the application
Yeah.
layer.
It's that precondition
wonder
that
that.
scares me though.
Yeah,
Like,
the precondition is it's mostly it's like network file systems that don't work.
that's true.
The big downside of wall mode is that it has like a garbage collection phase.
Mm.
Like every 100 writes, it flushes a checkpoint.
Can we trigger that on our own?
We could, but I don't know if we want to do that. Like there's a lot of intelligence, I think, in their wall mode for like doing the checkpoints at well-balanced intervals.
Okay. We're not that time critical in anything we do, except for maybe mining. But even then, like the block time is so long that garbage collection is probably not going to slow you down from mining.
Yeah, I agree. Like I don't see us being really terribly affected by checkpoints. So
Okay.
I mean, unless we need like significant code changes, I would say we should just do this and see what happens.
yeah, I think it's pretty easy. Like just all of our connection initializations just need to issue a pragma.
Oops. We will want a unit test to make sure that we can verify that wall mode does make this go away though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that wall mode by itself wouldn't make this go away, but it reduces the pressures that are creating this situation, which are bad pressures. Even if we have a busy handler, like
You don't want this handler in the first place. I agree.
yes, like you don't want the busy handler like getting invoked as often as it currently is. Like if you look at your logs while running a node, like the busy handler is getting invoked a ton.
Yes, it is. So we should really do two things then. We go to wall mode and then we hack a busy handler in just in case wall mode isn't good enough. That's what you think?
Yeah.
That works. I don't know if I can get to that this week, but like I'm keen on getting this fixed. Seems to be affecting a lot of people. I think we've already talked about the rest of the issues in the backlog at some point, and I don't think there's any new developments, are there?
Nope, sounds good.
Cool. Run through the board. Any particular action items?
I think that we had a couple, but we logged them in the issues.
All right. That's what I thought too. Dedicated docs week. Just whenever we got spare cycles, let's work on documentation. Cool. Anything else? Go ahead and stop sharing my screen then. Got 7 chat items here. Okay, cool. All right, guess we can end a little early then. Thanks all for coming.
Thanks, y'all.